Hi everyone, welcome back. Today we're joined by Natasha Ovuoba, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Consultant for Intermountain Healthcare. We're going to be having a conversation about diversity and inclusion, specifically with Intermountain, our community, our workforce, and how a community and a company can make a huge difference in this effort. Natasha, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate the time.
Thank you for having me.
So I want to talk a little bit about the beginnings of this. What is the Office of Equity and Inclusion at Intermountain? How did it come to be, and how does your role work specifically with this department?
So Intermountain's Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion was founded in 2017, and really our goals were to really celebrate diversity, learn how to accept one another's differences while still effectively working with one another, while still providing culturally competent care to our patients and consumers. We focus a lot on health equity, which really is that everyone has equal access to healthcare, that they're receiving it in a way that they need for the best outcomes. And then our community, of course, we're a community-based organization, and everything that we do revolves around how we can improve our Utah, Nevada, and Idaho communities.
And how long have you been in this role specifically?
I have been in this role since September of 2019, so not even a full year yet.
And have you enjoyed it so far?
I have. It's been an amazing journey.
That's really great to hear that we even have this department. I think it's really important for companies to make sure that they have a department that can actually focus so specifically on this as well. We also have a bunch of caregiver resource groups within Intermountain. There's 8 of them, and they range from the LGBTQ plus group to the multicultural group. Will you tell us a little bit about the importance of these groups and why they mean so much for a company?
Yeah, so these groups focus, they're focused around a lot of marginalized groups and underserved groups. And so we have 8. We have Differently Abled, which focuses on the need of people with disabilities. We have Empowered Women, Interfaith. We have LGBTQ, multicultural, military, women in analytics and women in medicine. And really, their sole purpose is to elevate the voices of people from these underrepresented communities so that they can help by escalating those voices and elevating those voices in driving Intermountain's initiatives and goals, so we can be able to hear from those populations as we serve them.
And do you know how long these groups have been around, and what was the initial push to say, okay, we need some sort of internal group for people to gather and help us really learn from?
Yeah. Our first group, I don't know the original year that was started. It was Women in Analytics. It was a very long time ago, and really it was actually started by people in analytics who really understood that women are not represented as much in that area. And overall in science, technology, engineering, and math positions, areas. And so they really wanted to be able to give them a place to network with one another, have resources for career development, and do some outreach so that we can help improve that career field for girls and women in our community so that we can attract them to our organization. The rest of the groups, I think the bulk of them were started in 2017 with our office, and we had 2 new ones added just last year and the beginning of this year. And really all of them have those same goals to make sure that they're connecting the members with those resources, with those career development resources, elevating their voices again, providing a safe space for sharing their experiences with one another, and making their experience at Intermountain a good one.
I know that with the military resource group, last year during Veterans Week, we came up with an entire plan. We worked with them to figure out what events to host for that group. So that group has a really large impact on what the company does, not only internally, but also externally. Which brings me to my next question for you. Last year, Intermountain was the official Pride Parade sponsor, and with the marketing and communications team and the LGBTQ caregiver resource group, we formed a planning committee, which you were on, and so was I, and it was a really great opportunity for people to come together to plan this event. It's the first event that Intermountain has done of something to this magnitude with Pride. Can you explain why this was so important for Intermountain to get involved with and what you loved about it as well?
Yeah. Pride, and you can attest to this as well. Planning Pride was really exciting, mostly because I think we sort of started with this ragtag team of caregiver resource group members, my office, and our marketing and communications team, and really kind of went through it very timidly, like, oh, okay, we don't know how many people are going to want to volunteer. It's okay. We'll be happy to get 100. Gosh, we'll be happy to get 50. And then we got over 700 volunteers. People were so excited and thirsty for Intermountain to support the LGBTQ community in this really big, splashy way. And it was monumental, not in just that we had our name as a parade presenting sponsor, but that it led to education for our caregivers. We were able to do e-learning modules for our caregivers to learn more about gender identity. And we were able to do kind of the background, maybe not as exciting work that really leads to progress and change in our organization. And I think it was the best way to really open up these dialogues and to be able to learn from one another and to be able to improve going forward.
And we had a really cool booth too at the festival where there was recruiters there talking about career opportunities. We had Select Health there doing health screenings. It was a really cool community event that came together. And this year, Pride is more of a virtual thing. We actually changed our logo on all of our social channels recently, and people were so excited to see it again. They're asking for decals or a t-shirt, which is a really good idea.
Yes.
So maybe that'll happen in the future. So I was really, really proud to be a part of that, and I'm hopeful that we keep doing it in the future. So in the last couple of weeks too, our nation and the world has been rallying together around racial inequality. It was triggered by the events of George Floyd. And when we talked about this question on Monday, we were discussing what to talk about. I had mentioned that this was the first time that the nation had kind of come together to talk about this, which is not true. I wanted you to talk a little bit about why it's okay to make those mistakes, but then be given the opportunity to be corrected about them and to learn about them. And then tell me why Black Lives Matter movement is so important, not only to the community, but to Intermountain.
Yes. Let me actually start with Black Lives Matter first. So I shared this with some senior leaders just yesterday. Black people are not saying that Black lives are better or best. And even in that statement itself, we're not even saying Black lives are equal. We're just saying that Black lives matter, that our lives matter, that our health matters, that our goals and our dreams matter, which I hope that everyone could agree with that, at least that very simple statement. Now, I think we live in we're living in a really interesting moment here, right? So many of your previous interviews have been around COVID-19. COVID really brought us to a standstill. We usually at this time would be getting ready for our camping trips, for our vacations, or going to our favorite theme parks, and we are not doing that. And really all we have is being at home and looking at the news and looking at social media. So while there have been videos of Black people being killed before, we were able to ignore it a little bit easier. It was easier to scroll past it. It was easier to change the channel because on to the next, on to something that's happier, on to something that doesn't really hurt your heart. And so we're in this moment now where we don't have the opportunity to scroll past it. We really have to live in what has been happening to Black people in this country for hundreds of years. And even when we talk about civil rights at all, in all contexts, we're in Pride Month, and Black and brown trans women were the first to protest for LGBTQ rights. Pride started as a protest with Stonewall, which maybe not everyone knows, but Black people and brown people were in that fight from the beginning, and Black people and brown people were a part of our women's suffrage movement. So Black people have been a part of every major civil rights movement in this country to improve this country. And really now at this time, all we're asking for is allyship and almost a chance to help fight for our own rights the way that we have for so many other groups.
I think that's a really good way to put something, is that you're looking for people to fight with you against your issues now, which is, I want to point out too that this is not a political issue either. I see a lot of people talking about how it's a political issue, but it's not a political issue, it's a human issue. We're all humans, we all are people, we all make up the same DNA. And I think it's really interesting that we've been given this opportunity to speak our voices and to get involved and to help people right now. But it's also been very difficult. And as someone who works in an office of diversity and inclusion, what does a company need to do with this movement, and how can someone as big as Intermountain in the community have an impact on what's going on?
Yes. So Intermountain has a lot of privilege and power. And because of that privilege and power, they have a lot of say in what happens in our community and how we can improve the lives that we serve in our communities. And that's not just on our own, but in really the influence that we have in working with other community leaders, working with our government, and really what people want to see is action. So you can say, right, sorry. You can say sorry. You can say that you're sad about the events that you've seen. But I think really people want to see that action. They want to see the change, and they want to see the improvement that's attached to those words. I think what is really interesting is at the beginning of this pandemic, and Salt Lake Tribune did a feature on this. We, as Utah leaders, so that's Utah State and Intermountain, we didn't do enough planning to be able to effectively protect our Hispanic and Latinx populations. And it is because we were not representing their voices where they needed to be represented. And we are able to correct that now by having our Spanish translation Facebook page, where we have a lot of good health materials on there, and by having more of our COVID-related materials translated into Spanish. But I think it's definitely a learning lesson for us that we need to be more proactive in the future so that we can address issues and disparities before they are maybe blown out of proportion and lead to lower health outcomes.
I want to talk about something that's going on at Intermountain too, that you've been involved with, those listen and learn, things that we're doing internally. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about what that is, what the purpose of those are, and how they came to be as well?
Yeah. So our listen and learns are, it is a town hall or forum type event where we have members of our senior leadership teams come and really listen to the experiences of caregivers. We have started with Black caregivers, Hispanic and Latinx caregivers, and Indigenous caregivers, because this is where we see the highest disparities in our communities, is with these populations. So the leaders are hearing it from a perspective of a caregiver's personal story, right? And they may share the way that they received care in our hospitals, or they may share the microaggressions that they've experienced at work. And so it is those caregivers' responsibility and really their accountability to be able to be open and vulnerable in sharing those stories, but then it is a way for our leadership team to be accountable for changing the culture of Intermountain. It gives leadership the opportunity to say, we hear you, here's what we're going to do to make sure that doesn't happen to you or anyone who looks like you again.
It's that whole saying, actions speak louder than words.
Yes.
I think that's very important, that, yeah, you can say whatever you want, but until something actually happens that's tangible, you're not really making a difference.
Yes.
We just got a question too from Facebook. Someone wants to know, what is the most fundamental or comprehensive way that Intermountain can incorporate equality?
Ooh, that's a great question. So a lot of people know this, especially our caregivers. Intermountain has our fundamentals of care that range from safety to engaged caregivers to stewardship, right? And this is where we set a lot of our strategic initiatives and our goals for every year, right? And we tie performance to those goals. I think there is really possibility there to have equity better incorporated into those fundamentals. It would kind of give a chance to, again, do that strategic thinking, to be thinking 3 and 5 years out for how we want to see health equity improved in our communities based on the goals that we set now in the present. So I think to really, to answer the Facebook question, I think we really need to add those strategic goals right at the top when we set our goals each year and year after year.
And I think that'll take listening to people who are understanding what is happening. I know that we are starting a committee with our OGBYN group to help address the disparity between Black maternal deaths that happen in the state of Utah, which is really exciting, and we're hoping to see some really great information and data come out of that about how our caregivers and providers can really acknowledge what's going on and figure out a way to fix it. Yeah. So I'm excited to see what's going on, and I think that 3 to 5 year plan that you talked about is really important because stuff is happening right now, but we can't forget about it just because it goes away. And I've kind of noticed that too on social, where people have stopped talking about it. It's been about 2 weeks since George Floyd passed away, and it's kind of stopped. So it's been interesting to see people kind of passing by and posting their regular content again. And I think as a healthcare company, we can't just stop. No. So I'm excited to see what the future holds on that. My next question for you is about being an ally. First, I would love for you to explain in your own words what being an ally is, and then also what I can do as an ally for the community.
So being an ally, just in my words, is really standing up for those who have less privilege. And it is educating yourself on their needs. It is defending them when they need it. And it's knowing that every fight for social justice, it's ongoing, right, in any single way. I always like to share this a lot because, yes, I am Black. And while I am Black and I may have less privilege than a white person, I still have privilege, right? So as someone who is cisgender, which is to say that I identify with the sex that I was assigned at birth, I have more privilege than someone who is transgender or non-binary. And so it is my responsibility to use that privilege to speak out for that community, to become culturally competent on their needs, and to really fight for their rights when their voices are not in the room. And same thing, I am able-bodied, so it's my responsibility to do those same steps for people with disabilities. So really, when we speak about allies, it's not protecting your friends and your family who you already have obviously an affinity for, right? People that are in your inner circle. It's protecting people who you possibly have never met because of the influence that you may have to impact their lives.
I think that's a really good explanation, that it isn't just about you or me. It's about what you have but privilege-wise over someone else, and how you can use that to help them with the social injustices they face. What are some ways that, as an ally too, you can help people? Are there pensions to sign, donations that you can give? What are some examples of things that you would like people to do?
Yes, yeah. I think I'll start with this. Give maybe your Black friends and acquaintances a break, or your Hispanic Latinx friends, your Indigenous First Nation friends a break. Don't come to them with every question that you have about what you can do. There is so much out there. educate yourself. Take the steps to educate yourself. Just scrolling through social media on their Explore page, you can find books, you can find podcasts, you can find YouTube videos. Really use that time, read those books, watch those videos, listen to those podcasts, and educate yourself. And then I always like to add that, there's really power in being an ally. You may be the only person in a room who's going to speak up in defense of someone else. And so as an ally, it is awkward, and you have to become really comfortable, sometimes with the uncomfortable, but it is your responsibility when you see discrimination in any form or harassment that you speak up, that you say that you have a concern, that you bring that room to a standstill so that you resolve it right there and then. Because even if someone, let's say that you have someone who's in the room who is Black and someone says a derogatory term towards them, if everyone in that room says nothing, it's very, very possible that that Black person will not speak out for themselves because they will feel they are not important. That though everyone heard the same term, that it didn't matter enough to actually bring it up. Bring up those hard conversations. So yeah, those are my two pieces of advice. Educate yourself and then speak out.
I have another question for you about that too. I've heard from a lot of people that they want to stop being asked if they're okay. How do you feel about that question? Do you feel like it's an appropriate question to be asking people right now, or as an ally, should I stop and think about what I'm asking before I do it?
Yeah. I'll only speak for myself, which is that I am not loving it anymore. It's very difficult just to constantly be talking about it. I think that's more what it is. It's not necessarily that you don't want people to ask you if you're okay. Of course you do. But for instance, I have been talking about racism for the last 3 weeks straight with family members, of course, and my closest friends. But when it starts coming from, your nail stylist, dog walker's cousin, it just gets overwhelming to have these texts, these well-meaning texts, when you just don't want to talk about it. You just want to take a break for a moment. So I would tread lightly. Let me say that. If you are really, really close with someone and you have had these conversations in the past, and you are friends, that would make sense. That's an appropriate place to open up a dialogue. If you've never had those conversations before with someone, don't start now until you really educate yourself about the issues, instead of coming to them and saying that you're sorry, again, without the showing that you're sorry.
That's really great advice. And thank you for coming here and talking with us, because I think it's really important that you are here talking about it. So I know that you've been talking about it for a while, but I very much so appreciate it. I want to talk about Intermountain's workforce as well, because a part of the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion is Intermountain's workforce. How are we making sure that our workforce at Intermountain accurately represents the community that we live in?
Yeah. So we do have some goals around attracting diverse candidates to our jobs, to our internships, right, all of the above there. And we also have some goals around unconscious bias training and really providing those tips of how to be an ally and how to have these crucial conversations. We have all of that, already available, already in the works. I think what will be more important than any of those is to really be the voice for change. Because if we are attracting diverse candidates into our system and then they're having a terrible time here for one reason or another, whether it is discrimination or it is harassment, then Intermountain is not meeting its goal of being inclusive and being a place where people feel that sense of belonging. Really, we need to work at every level, at all level, to make sure that our teams create psychological safety for anyone who works there, no matter what they look like, and that we do everything in our power to make everyone feel welcome. And that's not just candidates, that's not just caregivers, that is our patients, that's our members, that's our consumers, and that's anyone who crosses our doors at any time. We have to represent and care for the voices that are in our community, period, no matter whether our workforce matches our community demographics or not.
You bring up a really good point about patients. I think it's important to note that as a patient, you want to feel safe wherever you go. If you see someone who looks like you, I know that Hollywood has very much so looked at this and said, if people aren't seeing someone who looks like them on TV or in movies, then they're not represented accurately. So it's the same in healthcare. It's important that you're able to connect with someone and say, hey, this person looks like me. They will understand what I'm going through. I will feel safe here. So I think that's also really important as far as a diverse workforce, is we have to consider our patients aspect in that as well. So thank you for sharing that. Last question for you. What do you love about being Black?
So I love that Black culture is synonymous for me with liberation and resilience. I love that no matter what we've gone through, that we continue to thrive, that we continue to take care of one another, that we continue to take care of others, and that really we are a force behind freedom in this country, period.
Thank you. I want to mention one really quick thing too about Juneteenth celebrations. Tomorrow is Juneteenth, and Utah is holding a virtual town hall for it. It's from 6:30 to 8:30. We'll make sure to put the link there, but it's a really good opportunity for you to hear from people. If you've never celebrated Juneteenth before, you can learn something along the way. So we'll put that link in there. But Natasha, thank you so much for joining us and for talking with us today about this. We really appreciate it. And if you guys have any questions about anything that Intermountain is doing related to diversity, equity, inclusion, we do have a diversity page on our site that's constantly evolving that you can go look at and learn a little bit more. We also still have our COVID hotline available that you can call at 844-442-5224, and our emotional health relief hotline available 7 days a week from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. That phone number is 833-442-2211. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next time.